Hello and welcome to the Best of the 10, where we bring you some of the most significant reports of the past 7 days. In this week's edition, the shocking state of accommodation for troops in Britain, an exclusive report. 2 killed in a National Express coach crash, the driver is arrested. And how the silicon chip faces an unexpected competitor, the plastic semiconductor. The conditions endured by many troops in their barracks were revealed by the 10 o'clock news. Rats, mould on the walls and more besides are the sort of things faced by members of our armed forces here in the UK. The man in charge of soldiers' welfare said accommodation was so bad that the army was having to fight for what he believed soldiers deserved, as our defence correspondent Paul Wood explained.
The nation expects much from its servicemen and women. But when they return home, it's often to this. Some forces housing is quite simply squalid. These pictures from one barracks were emailed home over Christmas by a despairing and demoralised soldier.
My son had told me, and I spoke to him, that he was really fed up, he was really depressed because he couldn't believe the state of the barracks. And I just said to him, they can't possibly be that bad, and we're talking about trying to lift his mood a little bit. And he said, I'll send you some photographs, you see how bad they are. And they are shocking. He complains about the smell, complains about the puddles of water on the floor, which are from the leaky toilets, and he just wishes he could get out.
Senior officers too have had enough. The outgoing head of the army, Sir Mike Jackson, said forces accommodation was shaming. His successor, Sir Richard Dannett, called for a national debate on underfunding. Even the Iraq commander, General Richard Sheriff, spoke of a generation of neglect. Improvements are being made, costing £1 billion over 10 years. But the Army's senior officer in charge of housing told us people had to understand how poor the remaining accommodation was.
The issue we have is that there's still too much accommodation, which is of a poor standard and is old and is not modern in terms of the way that it's fitted for the families. It's one of the key issues for me in what we call the military covenant, giving our soldiers and their families what they deserve in return for what they do for us. So our duty now is to fight our corner in defence to get for our families what they deserve.
A BBC webpage about forces accommodation drew 90 responses from service families, unanimously condemning the state of their housing. Military blogs have similar comments. We had a swamp rat, said one post. Remember, they're talking about Britain, not Basra. Another said, there was a mushroom on the wall above my bed that was the size of a large dinner plate. The worst, asked one serviceman, was and still is the fungus-encrusted porter cabins in the mess. Another said, prisoners live in better conditions and have better care.
We've got a sustained programme of investment in accommodation. We've spent £700 million last year in improving service accommodation. We recognise there is a challenge. We recognise that the accommodation is not perfect and we need to improve it.
There is an unspoken understanding that when we send people out to fight and potentially die in our name, that our part of the bargain is to make sure that they and their families are properly looked after. If they're not getting the appropriate accommodation that's up to standards that they believe are adequate, they believe that contract has been broken and they're more likely to leave the armed forces.
So the question is, if they have to put up with this, how long will they be prepared to do this?
Paul Wood reporting there. Now, National Express took all its double-decker coaches off the road as a precaution after a crash which killed 2 people and injured many more, with people's limbs being torn off as the coach slid on its side along the M4. The driver was arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving and later released on bail. Here's Tom Simons.
In the darkness, just minutes into its journey, the London to Aberdeen coach overturned. Passengers were thrown from their seats, some out of shattered windows. Some lost limbs as the coach slid onto its side. In a major operation, firefighters had to use heat-sensing cameras to find and cut the survivors free. By morning it was clear National Express was dealing with its worst accident in recent times. 69 casualties, including 2 dead. Relatives of those who survived have been describing what happened.
Well, he just said they was coming off the main road onto the slip road, which takes you onto the M25, and all of a sudden the coach sort of veered to the left, I think it was the left, sort of went on 2 wheels, then it veered over to the right, and then all of a sudden it lost control.
The crash happened at one of the country's busiest motorway interchanges. The coach had left the M4 and was using a curving slip road to switch to the M25, headed north. At this point, while merging with another road, something caused it to turn over. Police have arrested the driver and taken the coach for forensic examination. They now say no other vehicle was involved. And tonight, National Express withdrew all 12 of these double-decker coaches from service for safety checks. The company insists it has no specific concerns, they're unstable. But a spokeswoman said it was the right thing to do as a precaution. Tom Simons, BBC News.
Now, America accepts more immigrants as permanent residents than every other country in the world put together. It's a nation built on a foundation of migrant workers. But in the latest in our series about a world on the move, David Willis reports on the desperate illegal methods being used by Mexicans to get into America.
The call tells of movement at the border. Not above it, but beneath it. We follow US Border Patrol agents into another world. Dark and dangerous. The new superhighway for illegal immigration. This is what they're up against. Gangs of highly organized people smugglers who bring in groups of up to 30 at a time. Here, agents sneak up on them as the migrants try to make their way to the surface. The group attempts to flee back to Mexico, but none of them make it.
I've been involved in 3 shootouts in the 10 years that I've been in the Border Patrol.
Agent Gus Soto knows this labyrinth of tunnels all too well. Every day, he and his men play a cat-and-mouse game with the people smugglers.
But as you can see here, just clothes that are just scattered around.
Evidence of those who've made it across the border and of the drugs some brought with them. This was packed with marijuana.
Anywhere between 25 to 30 pounds of narcotics. This is a bad sign for us, indicating that more than likely a narcotics load did make its way in.
The tunnels can't be sealed because they're vital drainage links. But it's people, not water, that's flowing through them now, and it's better business than trafficking drugs.
The immigrant smuggler himself wants to make as much monetary gain as possible with $2,000 to $3,000 per person. 10 people, that's $30,000.
A mile from the entrance, the tunnel suddenly narrows. Well, this is it, the border between Mexico and the United States, marked with this fairly crudely drawn yellow line, which you can see going up the wall and across the ceiling here. And for those who come down these tunnels every day, it's the big aim to take the step from there to here, American soil. Above our heads, the official port of entry for those crossing into the United States. Nogales is a city bisected by the border. This is the unofficial port of entry. Those who make it through the tunnel pop up in the street. Sonia made it through the tunnel when she was 5 months pregnant. She paid hundreds of dollars to a people smuggler and now lives in constant fear of being deported.
Oscuro. No había nada de luz.
It was pitch black and the water was up to our knees. The smugglers made us hold hands so we wouldn't fall. It smelled of dead animals and dead people. I never thought I'd come out of it alive.
But given that it is so dangerous, why do so many people do it?
I think people will keep using the tunnels because the poverty in Mexico is so horrible. Sometimes you eat and sometimes you don't.
I got 1 10-15 without a cage.
Poverty, it seems, breeds enterprise. Close one gap and another one opens up. Such is the allure of a new life in this land of immigrants. David Willis, BBC News, Nogales, Arizona.
It could slash the price of electronic goods and lead to a whole range of intelligent products. British inventors have secured £50 million of investment to make plastic components for electronics instead of the usual silicon. Our correspondent David Shuckman took a peek into the future.
The silicon chip beats at the heart of our electronic lives, but it may now be under threat. From a small lab in Cambridge today came an announcement that's shaking the computer industry worldwide. Because what's being made here could trigger the next industrial revolution.
So this is an example of the flexible technology.
Meet an electronic book you can bend. Inside, the workings aren't made of the usual silicon, instead they're plastic.
Technology. Well, this is one example. This is a flexible display which could hold and update all of the patient's records in a hospital, and it could be easily attached to the wrist like this.
Plastic electronics are cheaper and lighter than silicon and may take over.
The mood in the company at the moment is incredible. Everyone is incredibly excited about the opportunity to change the world. In 10 to 20 years' time, every electronic component that you have could be replaced, the silicon could be replaced by plastic.
The vision is for a future of plastic electronics, creating opportunities that even now feel a bit like science fiction. First, flexible plastic displays on mobiles and e-books, less fragile than the heavy glass screens we have now, and in the shops the Christmas after next. Then, take medicine, for example, the labels on the bottles telling you when to take it. Or on food packaging, where the price is adjusted by remote control. Beyond that, plastic sensors woven into clothing, maybe to monitor your health by keeping track of your temperature. And then, 10 or 20 years away, plastic chips so small, so light, so cheap, they could even fit inside contact lenses and beam the internet straight to you. Silicon microchips have transformed our world. Plastic could take it even further.
Well, we could have sofas, for instance, in which the cushions are actually switches. They could be used to activate the television set. You could change the channel by touching certain little patterns on the cushions, for instance. Could be a problem with a cat jumping on it. The curtains, for instance, could glow certain colours when somebody you know is approaching the front door. You could program it to do that.
Too weird to be true? Well, maybe not, because hot on the heels of these Cambridge pioneers are the giants of the electronics industry, also pursuing the holy grail of a plastic microchip. Suddenly, it's within sight. David Shuckman, BBC News.
Well, that's just about it. We'll be back with another Best of the 10 next week. Bye for now.